Hello there.
Bonjour.
Hello there. Hello, friends, lovers. Thank you for joining us. This is 5 Minutes with Robert Nasir and Amy Nasir. Today is Sunday, June 5th. How can it be Sunday, June 5th? We weren't here last week. Where did last week go? Hey, sorry about that. Life got lifey, and we missed a week. Oh my gosh. We were going to try to make it up on Tuesday, but there are reasons we couldn't do that. Excuse me. Last Sunday was my daughter's birthday.
Yeah,
and
my
it was
stepdaughter's birthday.
A very special birthday because, my daughter. So I had to postpone the show, and it looks like we postponed it a week. Thank you for coming back. You take a week off, you're like, is anybody even going to show up? But you are here
out there,
and you are the best. I see folks already in the chat, which is my favorite thing about the show, as I've said before, and it is true. Today is Sunday, June 5th, the 156th day. Sounding more and more like half a year. 156th day of this, your best year yet, 2022. You have 209 days left to make it outstanding, 203 days until Christmas. And here's what I want to know, because we always do the countdown to Christmas or the next big holiday, or Ocon coming up at the end of the month. But what I want to know, post it in the chat, write it down, send it to us, unless it's something super private and you don't want to share it. What is the next big day you are counting down to? If you're like me, you count down to the end of the year because you're keeping track of what you wanted to get done in 2022, or you're counting down the days till Christmas, counting down the days till your birthday or the birthday of somebody important to you. I'm just curious, what's the next big day you are looking forward to? Tell us in the chat. And on this day, June 5th, first of all, June 5th, 1967, the 6 Days War begins. June 5th, 1967.
Wait, the how many years?
Well, it was in 1967, but the war was 6 days.
Well, okay.
The 6 Days War, an armed conflict fought from the 5th of June to the 10th of June between Israel and a coalition of Arab states, primarily comprising Jordan, Syria, and Egypt. The amazing thing about the 6 Days War, in which Israel captured and occupied the Golan Heights, the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, the Gaza Strip, and part of the Sinai Peninsula, is that it was a 6 Days War. And the reason this comes to mind, and will tie into everything else we say, is because it's just listening to Yaron Brook.
Oh, yeah.
Talking about the war in Ukraine.
Which should only have been 3 days.
Should only have been 3 days. And the imperialist, Vladimir Putin,
yes,
thinking that he's going to save the Ukrainian Russians from those mean Ukrainian leaders.
All those Nazis.
Crazy imperialist.
Yes.
The word imperialist is going to come up a lot today.
And that doesn't mean a brand of margarine.
No, I wish it did. Oh,
that would
man.
be great.
If the only imperial was margarine, man, how great would that be? Also on this date, and you're going to see a theme here, and maybe you'll catch it and put it in the chat. On this date, FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, that crazy guy, takes the United States off the gold standard.
Boo!
June 5th, 1933.
Why, though, as they say in those memes?
I know, right?
Why?
I mentioned this on the social networks earlier. Can you imagine what would happen if the U.S. had stayed on the gold standard? If our money had been sound since the 1930s? June 5th, 1933, the United States went off the gold standard, a monetary system in which currency is backed by gold, when Congress enacted a joint resolution nullifying the right of creditors to demand payment in gold. He eventually made it illegal to own gold bullion. Eventually that was reversed in some ways, and finally for good in the 1970s. By Richard Nixon? No, Richard Nixon made it worse. It was Gerald Ford, of all people, who gave us at least some right to own gold again. According to the Keynesian economic theory, and this is what Roosevelt was acting on, according to Keynesian economic theory, one of the best ways to fight off an economic downturn is to inflate the money supply.
Oh, not break all the windows?
Not break all the... Well, that too.
That too.
He had dug plenty of ditches and broke plenty of windows.
terrible.
According to Keynesian economic theory, one of the best ways to fight off an economic downturn is to inflate the money supply. And we're talking about on this date, June 5th. On this date, happy birthday to John Maynard Keynes.
Oh, he's dead, right?
You know, you can go on YouTube and do a search for Keynes rap battle.
Yeah.
And you get to hear...
Who was he battling with? Who was he battling with?
I'm
going to look it up now.
That's a great... it's escaping my mind.
That's Hayek, of course.
Hayek, of course. Friedrich Hayek.
Of course.
So, yes, listen to the rap battle between Keynes and Hayek if you want to know the truth. You already know this. Anybody who listens to 5 Minutes with Robert Nasir already knows better, but it is a charming video. You should check that out. John Maynard Keynes, born on this date in 1883 in Cambridge, England. We let a Brit destroy our monetary system. Can you imagine?
They got back at us after the Revolutionary War.
After the Revolutionary War.
Now, he died in 1946.
That's right. He died at age 62 of heart attacky.
He died of stupidity.
I don't know if this is a typo on my part or if heart attacky is... Anyway.
I'm having a cardiac arrest.
I would say rest in peace, John Maynard Keynes, but you don't deserve the
He's
peace.
like, my broken heart shall create a new job.
Yes. But also, on the happy birthday front, happy birthday to Kathleen Kennedy. Now, there's going to be a mixed reaction out there because some people know Kathleen Kennedy, producer of all sorts of outstanding movies, including, some of my favorites like Hook. I love the Peter Pan story that was done, Hook, with Robin Williams. She did the Jurassic Parks film. A lot of these were in conjunction with her husband. And her work with Steven Spielberg, but especially her husband, Frank Marshall. She produced The Sixth Sense. All of the...
Who is this again?
Kathleen Kennedy.
Oh.
The great Hollywood producer Kathleen Kennedy.
Gotcha.
Was born on this date. She is 69 years old today. She was born in 1953. But because she now heads up Lucasfilm...
Oh, wow.
That means she's also responsible for the final 3 Star Wars movies. Well, responsible. She's producer of those films, or co-producer. But, she's also the producer or co-producer of The Mandalorian. So that makes up for a lot right there. Now, I haven't watched Obi-Wan Kenobi yet. I'm not that big a Star Wars guy, but I'm hearing enough good things about it. I'll probably give that one a watch, too. I enjoyed The Mandalorian. I thought that was great fun. So happy birthday, whatever the Star Wars folks want to say about you for those last 3 Star Wars films.
Well, what's most important about June 5th?
Yes.
Is that on June 5th, 1985, is the day that Ferris Bueller took the day off.
It is Ferris Bueller's day off. Remember that. Life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop once in a while and look around, you could miss it. I have to look that up. I usually quote that one directly, but my mind is not as strong today as usual. I've got resources in front of me like A Treatise on Probability by John Maynard Keynes. I'm spending too much time in that world, but this day, June 5th, there's too much of that. And not enough of the good stuff. And that kind of got me into a bit of a flurry with the current recession/inflation, as everybody's posting their $5, $6, $7 a gallon gasoline prices. And we've got war. We've got war in the Ukraine, Russia, the former Soviet Union, with all their nuclear weapons. And fortunately, they've had the sense not to use them yet. The world has gone insane. Now, you may say the world had already gone insane, because we've been talking about the culture war, and yet the crazies on the right as well. And it got me into a bit of a rant. Some of you saw some allusions to this, not illusions, although that too, allusions to this online. Because I was writing notes, not all of which I posted. I'm going to read some of them in a bit, but first I want to take a look at the chat.
It's a glorious chat, I must say.
We have
Thank
good
you
people.
guys.
Oh my gosh,
oh my goodness.
Some of my favorite people are in the chat.
Yeah, they're all our favorites.
I would say I shouldn't even read this rant
favorites.
because because the people in the chat are far too charming for this.
Yeah.
But the next topic, of course, the next topic is always, what do we go to? What were we listening to this week?
Oh, yes, that's right.
What have we been listening to this week? So, Amy, what have you been listening to this week? Anything special? Anything stand out?
No.
No? It's been a
No.
you might be picking up on.
I've been listening to flamenco music.
It's been a challenging week here.
Super challenging.
In Casa de la Nasir.
Yeah, it's nothing serious. Just yeah.
It's been tough. It's funny because
But I laugh.
I was putting together the show notes, including my Post-it note for the week. What note shall I post? And I'll show you the Post-it note of the week at the end of the week. But the first thing I thought of was one we've already done, which is, this too shall pass. But that is not the Post-it note of the week. That's just a teaser of the Post-it note for the week. What I've been listening to this week, well, I'll start out first with the 2 podcasts we did.
Yeah.
We did a podcast with our producer on our ARC UK show,
Woo,
Daniel Kraus. That was cool.
And he is in the chat on Facebook.
Daniel Kraus is in the chat. How awesome.
It's amazing.
Outstanding. And that was a great hour. An hour well spent. If you haven't seen it yet, you will want to spend that hour too. And that was good. Also Friday. Our Friday show with James Valliant.
Yes.
We did episode 3 or session 3 of our Keeping It Real series.
That's right.
That's the book that...
With the rapper, Leonard Peikoff.
The rapper, Leonard Peikoff. The podcaster, Leonard Peikoff. No, he did a podcast for 10 years, 12 years? Forever he did a pod. Thousands of questions and answers.
He had a nice, by the time he was all done, he had a really nice resonant radio voice, and he could have done a rap.
He could have.
Yeah.
He could have rapped against Keynes and Hayek.
Grandmaster
and put them both put them both in their place. He definitely could have done it. But in this particular session we're doing, this is a lot of real life advice and kind of behind the scenes objectivism-y stuff. You're talking to the guy who knows it all, and he's answering random questions that came in on his website. So that was great fun. This week's was about Atlas Shrugged. If you know the book Atlas Shrugged, and I know you do, you're going to love watching that session if you haven't already. Finally, on the What Have We Been Seeing, or What Have We Been Watching this week, we've been watching The Flight Attendant.
The Flight Attendant.
What a strange television series. It's not our kind of thing. Have you ever, I'm sure you have.
It's very much like, okay, I'm going to have to look this up.
Sometimes you've watched everything you wanted to watch. There just wasn't that much you were interested in, or you've watched a lot of stuff, but you got to the end of your we need to see this list. Now, I've still got some movies on that list, but I'm thinking, light things that you would watch over dinner if you don't want to spend more than 45 minutes in front of the television. And so we started looking around, and we tried. There's a new Julia Child.
Yeah. It's called Julia on HBO Max. I got through one episode. I think Robert was a bit more tolerant of it, but for those who really love Frasier or
Cheers.
Or Cheers, you might think this show is a little weird because there's a couple of characters in there with the same actors that played in Cheers and Frasier, who I can't get past their previous characters, and I can't believe they're new characters in Julia, and I'm just sorry. I just can't do it.
I see.
I'm sure I'm sorry.
It's a problem with character actors. You get stuck on some of their characters.
But I was going to say that the Flight Attendant, it reminds me, if anybody likes the Christina Applegate show Dead to Me, or that one about the window across the street or something like that with Kristen Bell. I forget what that's called, but it's sort of that kind of modern production and tension. Yeah, very tense, very nervous, and the mystery appears to change every episode where you're like, oh wait, that's not even the main bad guy, it's somebody else entirely. What's going on?
And that good guy isn't even a good guy, that's now a bad guy, or maybe not. So yeah, it's that kind of show.
And the protagonist is mostly drunk all the time.
A very damaged protagonist, which I guess is a tribute to the actress, because she's still mostly likable despite real
Yes.
deep character flaws. So
really deep character
we're
flaws.
not done with it yet. I can't
Not
even tell you if
done.
we could recommend it, but it's on the list of what have we been listening to or what have we been watching.
Oh, we've got some
this week.
responses. We've got a lot of people, or Jason on Facebook saying, he's listened to Kate Bush's "Running Up That Hill" because apparently that song was pretty prominent in a Stranger Things
I have
episode.
read that a dozen times.
And
people are saying, I kind of forgot about Kate Bush, but now that I saw Stranger Things, I'm totally a fan, and I've got to listen to everything
well,
she ever did.
I just got to say, Kate Bush is really, really interesting as an artist, a dancer,
Yes.
a musician, a singer, a songwriter. Kate Bush, if you are a weird person, highly recommend. That's all I'm just going to say.
Yes. Lots of questions in the
I
chat.
know, I love
What
it.
was Ayn Rand's legal name after marrying O'Connor? Her legal name was Ayn Rand O'Connor. I know that there are people who refer back to her Russian name, Alisa, and the Americanization, which, Alice sounds
not
really
quite
lame.
right.
But she never went by that. And, no, she went by Ayn Rand O'Connor. As far as I know, that was her legal name, too. Stephen also asks, say you pick up $20, but it's covered in a gnarly substance. How gnarly would it have to be for you not to spend it? Where do you draw the line? It's funny because I would throw it away. I just, drop it back down in the street. Why would you care? But it's so context laden because $20 to some people is a lot of money. Even to me, it's a fair amount of money. It's real money as opposed to, pennies or nickels that you would find on the ground. But it's not that much money. It's certainly not enough money for you to say, ew, but no, it's just enough to say ew. So again, it depends on you, depends on your income, and depends on your tolerance level. You might be having the kind of day where you're like, take this to the men's room, wash it off in the sink, and let it dry out.
I've got to give Stephen the award for asking the most questions. So, yay,
She's asking
Stephen.
a lot of questions. I need to scroll back up because I know I've missed a bunch here.
There's some. We've got...
Well, tell me if I missed anything important. And
What
I'll...
do you... Okay, now this is something that's going to relate to, I think, what we're going to be talking about in a bit.
Okay.
What do you think? Is there a connection between self-esteem and a political view? I think people with high self-esteem tend to lean libertarian. I think we can say a lot about this, and I think that this question is probably relevant to our topic today on individualism and the new imperialists, for sure. So we can answer that in just a bit, maybe. And let's see here. Congratulations, Jennifer, on your 24th wedding anniversary tomorrow. That's amazing.
Yeah, there's no question that advocates of capitalism are more intelligent, more attractive, they're stronger, they're more physically fit, and they're far sexier than advocates of socialism or mixed economies. And I can say that objectively because I just did. So there you go. If you were looking for an objective answer to that
Well,
one.
I mean, no, there is actually...
Oh, and John says about the $20, boil it. I'm good with that. They make money. It's funny. They make American money out of... It's more like fabric than it is paper, the actual content of a dollar bill or a $20 bill. But what's interesting is when we went to England, that stuff's weird. It's like half plastic, half... I mean, parts of it are transparent and parts of it are metal, and European
It's
money
really
is, or at least
weird.
British money is so weird. And they don't, I swear, the strangest thing to me was they don't have pound notes. The smallest paper currency in England is a
yeah.
5-pound note.
Right.
A 1 pound is a coin. Now, coins are more expensive. Well, maybe the way they print them now, the paper is more expensive. Anyway, the problem is that Adam Ant is still singing about, pound notes. Write it in a pound note. So, now that the pound note is gone, what is he going to do? But John's right. You could just boil it. Except you'd have to, boil your hands, Jim. You can wash your hands. Okay. I don't know. The pandemic, we're all so paranoid about picking up stuff. Or not.
Now it's monkeypox, everybody.
Monkeypox.
Yeah, don't have
The hell, how can you even take that seriously?
I don't know. Don't have any kind of intimate relationship with monkeys? I don't know.
Yeah.
No, it's actually a little serious. It's a little there are now vaccines being put out by the U.S. government or something. I don't know.
Monkey National. There is one person who's listening out here who will understand that reference.
We know how the government, is so excellent, so competent with regard to getting vaccines out. So we'll see about that.
Forget the topic for today. I'm just going to keep reading the chat.
Yeah, I know. Well, Apollo mentions, I'm not sure this is out of context, but he mentions $1,000 in the YouTube chat. So if that is a super chat, even though we don't have the capacity for it right now,
we don't have super chat.
Until you all spread or,
spread the word.
Spread the word.
It's your fault.
You know what?
It's you who can save the day.
If you have a Twitter account, put it out on Twitter.
Yeah,
forget
put it
Facebook.
on Twitter.
Don't worry about Facebook.
Say go to these guys' channel.
Yeah.
YouTube.com/Robert Nasir, and hit subscribe. Whether you want to subscribe or not, just hit subscribe. You'll get reminded every now and then that we've got a show.
Bell.
If you watch it, you'll realize it's better than anything else you're listening to. But even that aside, just subscribe. Get us to 1,000 subscribers. YouTube will turn on the super chat option. See, that's when all the magic happens.
Yes.
But
so
in the meantime,
spread the show
to
your friends.
In the meantime, you can still, send money our way. If you go to robertnasir.com, you will see links to our PayPal for one-time contributions. You will see links to our Patreon, where some of you know who you beautiful people are. It's what the cool kids are doing, where some of us are already patrons once a month. That is too cool as well.
Yes.
In fact, I would even say that if you want to ask a question and get sure that it is answered, you could make that PayPal contribution and then say, hey, Robert, I just sent you guys $4,000 in a PayPal contribution. Here's my question. Well, maybe not 4,000. No, 5,000 would be better. But whatever number you choose, do that thing.
Please do. 9 out of 10 epidemiologists recommend this show.
That's true.
9.5 epistemologists recommend this show.
I know where that number was pulled out of, and I can tell you that's absolutely true. So, it's interesting because...
wait a minute. Daniel feels betrayed somehow. You'll have to tell us why.
Uh-oh.
ARCUK Robert. Well, yeah. There's also that ARCUK thing.
That's right. He tried to use the ARCUK emoji. The icon. We've got special emoticons on the ARCUK.
Yes.
Little representations of Amy and me. And he tried to use one in the chat, and of course it doesn't work on my personal channel.
I see what happened.
You see what happened there. I mean, he might be disappointed about something else as well, but no, it just it doesn't work here. That is too bad.
Oh, man.
Crazy. Yes,
goodness.
let me just catch up real quick here. So what's interesting to me, and this is perfect, this is exactly what I wanted to see, is how many people are in the chat from our Thursday and Friday shows, from the ARCUK, from the objectivist community. And this is cool because on Sundays, I usually am much quirkier, and we get very silly, Amy and I both, because this was our personal show. We started this over 2 years ago. How the hell has it been over 2 years?
It has been.
You people are amazing for following us on this journey, except for the few people who dropped out, and they're now sad. Every day they cry, and hopefully they'll come back soon because of that. But what's interesting is all of the things I talked about today. Why would you bring up FDR? Why would you bring up the gold standard? Why would you bring up John Maynard Keynes? Is because I was on a bit of a tear this week. And it's funny because our Thursday show, which is usually the philosophical show, where we get into the dirt and the nitty-gritty and all the philosophical stuff, was great this week. It was light. It was lighthearted. We got to talk to Daniel. And Friday, we had a very light and fun time. And yet, what's been on my mind are the new imperialists. And that's a phrase that just got stuck in my head. No, I didn't read it anywhere. In fact, I looked it up to see if did anybody else have the same thought I did. And it started because somebody was talking about the culture war and what's going on in the schools, and then what's going on in Ukraine. Yaron Brook got to talking about the war in Ukraine. And somebody said, Yaron, I think it's going to go on a while. And Yaron said, yeah, this is going to be a long one. It could go on probably into 2023. And then when I saw today was the anniversary of the start of the 6 Days War. Now you think a 6 Days War might be a minor skirmish, but no, this was the war in which Israel reasserted their power over the Golan Heights and the Gaza Strip. And East Jerusalem, and 6 days is all it took. Don't know why it's taking more than 6 days in Ukraine, other than the fact that Russia, if you look at it on a map, I've got a map of the world in front of me right now on the wall, is about 400,000 times larger than the country of Ukraine. The fact that Vladimir Putin can't even beat Ukraine tells you all you need to know about what I want to talk about. To me, the new imperialists are precisely the people who complain about the old imperialists. During the Sunday morning study group led by James Valliant this morning, they're studying the ominous parallels. A question was raised. Now, riddle me this, folks. Listen to this one, especially all of you, but especially the folks who are here who have heard our Thursday shows or any of the ARC UK programming. Was the Greek philosopher Plato a villain? Or was he doing his honest best to understand the world?
Being a primitive.
Plato with his world of forms and his philosopher kings.
And his...
See, he believed that the philosophers, the thinkers, people like himself, of course, were the ones who really got reality. They really got what's really going on out there. The real realities behind the shadows of our imperfect senses. And therefore, the ideal society. In the ideal society, the philosophers who knew these higher truths should be the leaders. There should be leaders who had a better handle on the way things really were. The individual minds of their followers, on the other hand, that's secondary, at best. And they should subordinate themselves to the dictates of the wise. And therefore, the individual's judgment could and should be overridden by those who know better. Mother knows best.
Yeah, because, if you're not going to obey your leaders, how can you be happy in life?
Now, in an era of kings and pharaohs, in the ancient times, was that, if not the right conclusion, at least one that could have been honestly reached? We start out as children, so we are well acquainted with that state of being in which we must rely on the knowledge and judgment of those who are older and wiser than ourselves. Plato concluded that this kind of relationship, this parent-child relationship, or teacher-to-student relationship, of leader to subject, that was the way of the world. He looked out there. He looked at what he thought was reality, including what people were doing, and thought that's the way it is. See, it's an open question whether Plato was honest in reaching this conclusion. And I'm inclined to think that he was doing his best to figure it all out, even though he held a whole lot of prejudices and experiences with a particular kind of context that had an effect on his thinking. But that ball was picked up. That idea was picked up by Constantine and Augustine and the Roman Empire and the British Empire. To this day, the UK is a monarchy. And we know that it's not an old-style monarchy, and a lot of what, for example, the Queen does or the royal family does is ceremonial, but some of it is substantive. And even if the monarch no longer has absolute power, that's only because the power has been distributed to the Houses of Parliament, including the House of Lords, which maintains its roles not by democratic elections, but by appointment and heredity. The czars, the commissars, the kings, the dictators. What is the most fundamental common aspect? Now, somebody in the chat is going to say force, and they wouldn't be wrong, because that's important. Somebody will go deeper and they will say altruism. And that's closer. But the greatest common factor, or at least what I've been thinking about this week, the greatest common factor is the replacement of the individual's judgment with that of the leader, the ruler, the chosen, the select, the philosopher, kings. We never dropped that. Amazingly enough, in modern times, America, the country founded on the protection of individual rights, the sovereignty of the individual, the right to life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness of the individual. This is the country, America, the United States of America, that is regularly, repeatedly accused of imperialism. I said this before, the United States has fought countless wars of self-defense and even wars of self-sacrifice. The wars in Korea and Vietnam and Iraq. These were fought selflessly for poor reasons and to no good end. Certainly no selfish end of the United States. We left Korea with nothing. We threw thousands of American lives, conscripted American lives, away in Vietnam and left in defeat. We saved Iraq from the dictatorship of Saddam Hussein. And then we left them to craft a whole new dictatorship, and without even a tanker of oil for our efforts. All those people who thought we were going there for the oil. Some of you may be too young to remember that. And my point, again, isn't that altruism led to these disasters, but something more fundamental, which is also what leads to altruism. It's the premise that the good can be imposed on the less wise, the less able. That the good life can be forced on you. The good life can be legislated. People can be forced to be better than they are. They can be forced to live the good life.
So Jim on Facebook has some questions.
Yes.
He was interrupted when you were talking about Plato, and he says...
we started out with the question, was Plato a villain?
What was Plato honest about? And then he says, subordinating your individual mind to authority, is that what this discussion of Plato is concerning?
Yes. And more than the acquiescence or subordinating your mind is those who would force that to happen.
How can somebody be honest about that, though? Or kind of doing his best with what he had kind of idea? I mean, could Plato actually be honest in what he thought? I mean, he was living in a world where there were slaves. That was a common thing. And, but I mean, is it, I guess it depends on...
Well, I don't know if Plato was pro-slavery, but I know even Aristotle believed at the time that some people were of such low psychology or low mind that slavery was the best thing for them. Now, they were wrong about that.
Right.
Was that more believable 400 BC than it is 2,400 years later? I guess that's part of the question on the table. Can somebody, even in those times, believe that? And the reason, again, why, and the reason why I think that there may be something to this idea that Plato might have been figuring things out the best he could, is that you've seen it throughout history. Think of when the British took over India. Or a better example was given recently when Cortez fought the Aztecs. Well, why would he go and try to be an imperialist in the land of the Aztecs? Well, because the Aztecs were living like savages. They were sacrificing their children, and not even killing them first, but sacrificing them live, cutting open their chest to pull out their beating heart in order to appease the gods. Cortez comes along, sees this, and says, these people need to be conquered. This has got to stop. You might say, but Cortez wasn't going there to establish a libertarian utopia, and therefore he was just an imperialist.
And he also wasn't trying to protect Spain from the Aztecs, because the Aztecs couldn't even, they were not a threat. So, yeah, I mean, I would say that, yeah, it's certainly a mixed case.
Well, and my point in bringing up the examples, you know, the British monarchy in India, or Cortez in the land of the Aztecs, it's not always obvious that people aren't better off when you bring them civilization. Same argument has been made with regard to the American Indians.
Yeah.
And what Christopher Columbus and the later pilgrims brought, the kind of civilization, the John Locke's idea of individual rights. The Indians who adopted Western ideals from England did very well. On the other hand, a lot of them were just savagely fought and killed. Somebody at the time obviously believed the Indians were better off, even if it wasn't their own first-hand judgment, to have civilization imposed on them.
Yeah.
Now, knowing what we know about philosophy, obviously, we would say, well, you can't impose civilization on somebody. If it's not chosen by their own first-hand thinking, that's not a value to them. But, you know, tell that to the kid who's having his heart ripped out of his chest. Tell that to the Indians who are fighting each other constantly in savage wars. Yes, I know there were peaceful Indians. I'm talking about the tribes that weren't, and there were plenty of those. Talk about the people who were just slaughtering each other in the name of their ideologies, that when somebody comes along and says, no, you can't do this anymore, that it's not at least reasonable for Plato to say, maybe that is the best we can do. It's very easy in 2022 to say, no, they should have known better. Didn't they read The Virtue of Selfishness and Capitalism, the Unknown Ideal?
Yeah, that's right.
So, you know, is it possible that Plato was doing his level best to figure out the way things really were?
Bill on YouTube, he says, no one expected the Spanish Inquisition.
Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition.
Love it. Oh my gosh.
And again, the reason I'm thinking about all this historically is precisely because in the modern culture war, we have people calling themselves liberals who condemn the United States of all places. If ever you want to criticize imperialism and colonialism, I'm sorry for you on the podcast, you can't see me making the air quotes, but if anybody is going to criticize a country for imperialism and colonialism, why on God's green earth would you choose the United States to criticize? The country that, whatever our mistakes at the beginning, ended all of that.
Right. Ended all of that. And really, and lost a lot of lives over it.
And yet, at the same time, how much of our government, 95% or more, is made up of people who want to do exactly that platonic thing of saying, well, you as an individual, you're not going to do the right thing. You're not going to spend your money in the right places. You're not going to contribute to the right charities to take care of the poor. You're not going to buy the right insurance that you would need to protect yourself against your own issues. You're not going to do the right stuff. You need to be told. You need to be compelled by people who are wiser than you, or by the community as a whole, because of course we know when you put together a committee, when you put together a community, when you put a whole lot of stupid people in a room, they're much smarter than any of those individual stupid people. How many times every day are you compelled to act against your own best judgment for the sake of values that are not your own? the reason why we're experiencing inflation is no mystery. The cause of inflation is the inflation of the money supply. It seems silly to say that because I know there are advocates of modern monetary theory, MMT, out there saying, no, inflation isn't caused by inflation. Inflation isn't caused by inflating the money supply. We just need to improve consumer confidence and move money around in ways that we, the smart people, know will get things going. But the solution isn't any of that. The solution's obvious. Everybody in the chat, you know what the solution to inflation is, don't you? Well, I'll give you the spoiler. The solution is stop printing money. Do not inflate the money supply. Now, the problem is that if you don't cut spending, you're going to go into debt, and eventually the debt becomes unmanageable. Well, that's true. So part of the bigger solution, not to inflation, but to the crisis that comes after that, is stop spending money. I love, there was I think it was Saturday Night Live had a skit where somebody prints a book, and the book is, how to solve all your financial problems. It's done like one of these midnight marketing commercials, infomercials. And the name of the book is Stop Spending Money You Don't Have.
Oh, right.
And you've got this couple who are sitting around their kitchen table. Oh, I don't know what to do about all these bills. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? It's Steve Martin and I think Gilda Radner. And Chevy Chase comes by. He's like, the solution to all your problems is right in this booklet. Stop spending money you don't have. It's a great skit. But for some reason, nobody in the government has ever seen that skit. Well, of course, it's not that simple. They're Platonists. They are philosopher kings. Modern monetary theory survives because a lot of really smart people believe that a lot of less smart people can be nudged into doing more of the right things if the really smart people manipulate them via dollars and cents. In today's culture war, the so-called liberals tell us repeatedly that inequality and inequity are inextricably related to America's imperialism and colonialism, and yet these same liberals prescribed endless controls, endless regulations, endless taxation, endless spending, all in the name of compelling you to do the right thing. Things you'd never do on your own, things you don't know are in your best interest. They aren't in your best interest. From spending your money on the right things, to living in the right kinds of homes, to eating the right kinds of foods, to raising your kids with the right kinds of ideas, to saving the planet by driving the right cars and using the right light bulbs.
That's right. And you need to eat the right foods, which is vegan foods, and drive Priuses or other electronic vehicles. Don't think about coal.
Yep. Now here's the payoff, because my rant is almost over.
Oh, is it?
And here's the payoff.
Okay.
These are things you would never do on your own, based on your own judgment and for your own values. But you see, they know best. And they can force you to do what's best, unquote. Trouble is, everything about force and pragmatism is wrong, is counterproductive, is immoral and impractical, and this is why the wars, all the wars, from the political war, to the culture war, to the war against leftist ideology in the schools, to the war for abortion rights, right down to the bullets and bombs and blood in the war in Ukraine. The wars are a war of ideas. The real imperialists are those who seek to rule your life, not just by force, but by making your mind irrelevant.
Right. By making it impossible for you to act on your own best judgment.
Which in the long run only leads to destruction. because the mind does not and cannot work under compulsion. And the free, functioning, rational, individual mind is the source of everything good in the world.
This is true.
And that's what I've been thinking about this week. The fact that there are people out there who think America is imperialist, it's unfair, it's inequitable. The idea that freedom is coercion.
Right.
I guess that makes sense from the same people who've been telling us recently that silence is violence.
Oh, man. I'll give them silence.
Well, I'll tell you this. I ain't going to be silent no more. So this is an unusually political rant for me on a Sunday, on a 5 minutes episode. But it's been on my mind. I had to get it out. I really appreciate the comments in the chat.
Yeah, and this, and this is really illustrates the importance of individualism. It's the importance of respecting other people's ability to reason for themselves. You need to trust in the power of reason, and each individual has it, and you can't, if it's immoral, it's evil, it's despicable to try to force them into what you think the good life is, or what you think that they should be doing with their lives. And it can never be done. We see countless examples of this from all of the communist and socialist countries, and including the current imperialist countries like Russia. It's just...
It goes back to our episode on benevolence. And in this way, there's an old idea, I remember hearing about it back in the 80s from Rush Limbaugh, about how many people will say to you this: well, I'm doing okay in life. And when I look at my neighbors, all my neighbors are doing okay. But I know there's a bigger problem out there, and a lot of people are struggling. A lot of people are, destitute, starving, Or, well, I'm a reasonable person, and my family and my neighbors and my coworkers are all reasonable people. But, given the news and the things I hear about, I know that a lot of people out there are just irrational. And there's 100 different versions of this. What you see in your day-to-day life, at work, at the grocery store, in restaurants, at coffee shops, normal people doing normal things, living a normal life, being generally good. And yet, how many people say, well, I would do the right thing even if the government didn't compel me to. And I would give to charities, or I would donate to hospitals, or churches, or whatever your avenue is. But other people won't do that, and that's why we need the state to take on that role. John points out in the chat, but free people are dangerous. Who knows what they would do?
Right. They don't. When people don't have the knowledge to be free, they don't know that what their society needs is a top-down government prescribing everything for all of the masses.
Yep.
It goes back to Jackie Chan's stupid quote about Taiwan. They shouldn't... I
don't know how anybody can be a Jackie Chan.
You
wouldn't think that one
Chan?
stupid thing would ruin somebody's career. But if there was ever a case of that one stupid thing should ruin his career, that would be it. For Jackie Chan to say, well, Taiwan, their people really, they're not ready for freedom.
They're not ready for freedom.
They couldn't handle capitalism.
Yeah, they're not imperialist enough, apparently.
So going back to the beginning, because Jim gives his response to my question about Plato, he says, my immediate response is that Plato was most likely honest in his belief in the necessity for the elite or philosopher kings to do the individual's thinking for him or her. Now, taking a break from Jim here, I have to say that it's not that the philosopher kings would tell you everything you had to do. It's just that we knew countries have rulers, and who should the rulers be but the philosopher kings? So going on, he says, well, he was upfront about it. Kant, on the other hand, would probably couch that idea in subjectivist or groupthink terms. that would certainly be dishonest. And Jim, I have to agree, because even though it's hard to imagine somebody doing everything Kant did, and it was deep and intense, and he went into all these different areas of philosophy, and also being so corrupt that he is trying to fashion a philosophy of destruction, I don't know how you could not think that, given the Enlightenment, given what John Locke was writing well before Kant, given history, it's hard to imagine that Kant wasn't deeply, deeply dishonest.
Yeah.
Jim also says, you would think that our leaders would have learned from history, that is, if they studied it, that printing more money is deadly to a country's economy. Didn't they ever hear about Germany's hyperinflation in the 1920s? Well, Jim, obviously you could also add Venezuela's hyperinflation 5 years ago. But here's the thing. Modern monetary theory, MMT, which almost all modern economists, well, the ones who are in power, believe in, what it really means is utter pragmatism. We'll do it right. We'll tweak it. We'll change it. We won't make the same mistakes they did. They had the right idea. Of course, we can manage the economy better than just people using their own best judgment. But we won't make those same mistakes, because we can look at Germany, we can look at Venezuela, and we'll tweak it.
Not our gang.
Not our gang, exactly. Now, I'm talking economics, and it turns out Jonathan Honig is in the chat.
Yay,
Jonathan knows 1,000 times more about economics than I have ever gotten.
We should have a call-in number.
Yes, we really should. We really should. But thank you for listening to my rant. Again, if any leftist ever uses the word imperialism to you in describing the United States or any advanced civilized economy, remind them that what they want is precisely imperialism over the individual human mind. Anything that says, I know better than you do what's best for you. And not just the leftists, because you see it from the right too. We mentioned the abortion issue, but there are other issues as well, whether it's drugs or pornography or assisted suicide or any of a number of rightist issues. Anybody who says, Father knows best, Mother knows best,
yes, you are.
and we are your mother.
Right, you're too stupid. You're a child. You can't make decisions for yourself, and we are going to now proscribe what you need to do with your life.
There are wiser people than you who know what you should do with your money, with your time, with your energy. There are still, in 2022, philosopher kings.
Yeah, there are. And I mean, what really gets me here is that, as some people said in the chat, you can look at what's happened to Cuba, what's happened to, Russia, what's happened to, what happened in Cambodia, and Vietnam and North Korea, for Christ's sake. People, again, they have this concrete bound, pragmatic viewpoint that if it was their gang, they could actually go in and do something really special for the people. And they don't even understand, okay, well, before I take this action and I stage a coup or I pass these laws or whatever it is, what are the repercussions of this action? This is going to affect a whole mass of people, an entire state or an entire country. How is this going to actually work in reality? And oftentimes, they don't even want to think about that because their God has told them that, or their spiritual leader, or their whoever inspires them, Pol Pot or whomever, has it's how intrinsicism plays out in reality, and how no one wants to actually think about the repercussions, or in principles for that matter.
Yes.
Yeah, so what do you got there?
So, before we run over on time, I've got 3 things left for you. These will go quick. First of all, one of the many good antidotes to the kind of thinking we're talking about is Nikos Sotirakopoulos' book, Identity, Politics, and Tribalism. Worth a read if you don't already have it. I know a lot of the ARC UK folks have already ordered this book, and many of you have already read it. Outstanding stuff. If you haven't ordered it yet and you're wondering, is this really relevant? Don't I already know about collectivism and tribalism? Look on YouTube for Nikos' talk at the Ayn Rand Con Europe. It's on YouTube. You can watch it. An outstanding summary of what's in the book. You will read that, and you will see that, and then you will say, oh, okay, I need to read the book. Second of all, my Post-it note for the week. I pointed out earlier, this week has been a this too shall pass kind of week, but that's not my Post-it note for the week. My Post-it note for the week says, first things first. I may have used this one before. It's one of my favorite expressions.
Actually, I don't think I've seen that yet.
Okay. Well, it's one of my favorite expressions. It's an old expression. First things first. You say it at the start of a meeting. Look, first things first. Here's where we got to start. But it's also a great note to yourself. It's a great reminder that when you get up in the morning, or if you find yourself drifting or distracting, one of the easiest ways to get distracted is, I've got this thing I really need to do, but I've got this other thing I need to do too, and I'm kind of sick of this one. Let me go do the other. And sometimes you've just got to tell yourself, look, I got 10 things on my to-do list, but one of these needs to come first. And it's a great way to keep yourself focused, is to remind yourself, first things first. Do that first thing. Sometimes it's handy to break away, do another thing for a while, but sometimes you got to say, first thing first. And in that regard, and this one's already been posted to my social media, so I'll cover it real quick. My homework assignment for the week. I've been updating my morning routines. You know about that if you're on Twitter. You've seen me post the time of day that I wake up every day. I've been waking up before 6 o'clock. I've been upping my exercise regimen. I'm now, for this month of June, bicycling every day. That's posted on my bicycle thread. And one of the things I told you is in my morning routine is a visualization exercise. Visualize your successful day in advance. Decide what it's going to look like. Spend a little time thinking about it, what it's actually going to look like. But I came across an insight. Somebody was talking about sales, how to sell more. If you feel bad asking for $5,000 for your lecture or your program, imagine asking $25,000 for it. Spend some time with that. Get comfortable with that number. And that one might feel uncomfortable too, but once you spend a little time with $25,000, $5,000 will feel better. I thought that was interesting. So I wrote this real quick. Rehearse for more. And it's on my Facebook wall, so I won't read the whole thing, but we're all too likely to go into a task or a project or our whole day cold. No visualization, no projection, no mental rehearsals. We all hate doing rough drafts. You remember in school, your teacher would say, do a rough draft and turn in your rough draft before you write your paper, and you'd be like, I don't want to do a rough draft. I could write this paper without doing a rough draft.
Or turn in your outline.
Turn in your outline. Turn in your outline ahead of time. I don't need to do an outline. I could write this paper cold. If and when we do mentally rehearse, we rehearse exactly the goal or outcome we want. But here's the thing. If it's a stretch goal, a difficult achievement, a daunting proposition or outcome, we could be left feeling like it's a real stretch. Like, this is pushing boundaries. This is going to be hard. I could easily fall short. And feeling that stretch can sap your motivation. Whereas if we rehearse, if we visualize in advance, not the specific targeted outcome, but something far, far more than the target, then the target can feel like no stretch at all. If we want to run a 5K, rehearsing in our minds 21K, I don't mean run out a half marathon, but just imagine it in your mind. What would that look like if you pushed yourself that hard? Think about it. Think about go past 5K, you're at 10K and you feel your knees giving out. You're at 15K and your chest muscles hurt from your lungs. Rehearse that. And when you go to do that 5K, at 5K, it won't feel like you pushed yourself to the limit. It will feel like, I was up for this. I was ready for this. Hell, I could do a 21K. I wouldn't, but I could because I visualized it. If you want to raise your savings or your salary $5,000, rehearse for $50,000. Visualize in your mind. Imagine it. What would it take? What would you have to do? How would it feel when it happened? And then, all of a sudden, asking for that $5,000 raise or getting $5,000 in savings over the next 6 months doesn't seem unreasonable. It seems much, much more possible. And, around the house, if you want to clean out your cupboards or the basement, something I need to do, or any decluttering you need to do, just do this. Visualize. Rehearse in your head. Again, you're not going to go out and do this, but really rehearse in your head. What would it mean for you to clean the whole house or declutter the whole house? Rehearse it. Visualize it in advance. Then when you go to do the smaller task that seemed so big, Try this out. It will work. Anyway, that's
So
my
it'll
update
be-
to my visualization exercises. I'm going to
So-
start rehearsing for more.
So how does this relate to first things first? Because are you thinking in terms of if you visualize what it all might entail, that first step that you're going to take isn't going to be so tense with anticipation of it being a huge project?
That's an interesting connection you've drawn because I wasn't making any connection at all. Those were two entirely separate things.
Concepts in a hat, everybody.
No, because the visualization exercise happens before you take any steps. This is all part of your prep for the day as you're planning and organizing your day, deciding what it's going to look like. And then, yes, now that you have done your visualization exercise and you know, man, I could push myself even harder than that thing I'm dreading, and now I kind of feel up for it, then yes, when you go to do that first thing first, you've got that much more energy, motivation, willpower. Actually, not just willpower, but you've got the gasoline, the fuel.
So I know that we're running long, but we have some questions that we didn't really quite answer from Stephen.
Good. Stephen, okay. Well, you said
Yeah.
he was asking the most questions of anybody in the chat.
Yeah,
so let's do this quick, and then we'll wrap. What do you got?
Most question awards. So back to what I had said earlier. What do you think? Is there a connection between self-esteem and a political view? I think people with high self-esteem tend to
I thought I answered that by making a humorous remark. And the reason I did it that way is because one thing I have learned is that some of the smartest people I know are the most politically wrong people I know, and not just left or right. I know people on the left who are geniuses, brilliant. I know people on the right who are geniuses and brilliant, and they're both wrong. They're just wrong. Go to a Mensa meeting, but go to anywhere where very intelligent people are hanging out, and you will be shocked by how stupid they are about things that are not within their wheelhouse, their bailiwick,
I really
whatever
think
either
that
of those words mean.
when it comes to philosophy and politics,
Yeah.
a lot of people do what's called compartmentalization.
Yes.
And so they're very, very intelligent, and they're oftentimes they're doing the right things in life. They kind of lean towards, at least in their actions, not necessarily their words, rational self-interest. And they're doing things. They have values, and they take care of things, and they're responsible in terms of what they need in life and what they want in life, and making them find happiness. But when it comes to those more abstract concepts in relation to other people and how, ethically, what's the correct moral code, all they have is altruism, and, how people should live together. All they have is collectivism and statism, and the new imperialists kind of perspective. I think that, I think they think, maybe they just don't think, or maybe they can't figure out. Maybe they've just kind of given up and thrown their hands up in the air and said, I can't deal with this. All politics is just suffering.
Yeah, that's not what I see, though, with the kind of people that are being asked about here, people with high self-esteem. No, what I'm seeing here is, out there in reality, listen to people who you would probably consider liberals. People like Steven Pinker, for example, who I don't doubt his self-esteem at all. Any successful person that you know, but who holds a different political viewpoint, you would think that the higher somebody's self-esteem, the more reality-based he must be. But, as Amy said, you would be surprised how much people can compartmentalize, how they can be virtuous in the ways that most lead to self-esteem in terms of their actual personal behavior, in terms of their own personal productivity.
Right.
In terms of the way that they relate to their friends and their family. It's why there's a difference between knowledge and wisdom. Because wisdom, actually, the knowledge that allows you to lead a successful life, it's not a direct corollary with what leads to your political beliefs. We're so used to, in objectivism, the idea that people are consistent, a unified whole. If you believe this in metaphysics, you will believe this in politics.
Right.
But how many people, for example, on the right are religious? Heck, how many people on the left are religious?
Yeah, how many atheists on the left don't respect reason?
cetera, et
actually
cetera.
don't respect reason.
So
and I think that really comes down to this, is that I think that self-esteem is finding yourself being efficacious in reality, and that's where that comes from. But in order to do that, you need to be a thinking person, you need to be a reasonable person, you need to respect reason in yourself and other people. And that, of course, people will say to themselves the deadly words, which are like Jackie Chan, not Taiwanese, they're too stupid to be free or to accept freedom. And so you have this notion, that this collectivized notion that you've got this group of people, this monolithic group of people, they're not individuals, they're a group, and they're all going to be stupid, and you need to do something about them.
So my short answer is somewhat, but it's complicated.
Yeah.
I mean, I bet if you ran the numbers, yes, you might find a little higher self-esteem among libertarians than you do among other groups, but it's tenuous, it's complicated, it's
Yes.
mixed. And look out in the real world, and you'll see exactly what I mean. If you just look at enough people that if you know people on the left and people on the right and people in libertarian, you will see that there are a lot of miserable libertarians, angry, bitter libertarians, who haven't figured out that their own life is more important than their political battles.
There are probably a lot of incel libertarians,
I don't know
if I
about
had to
that.
guess.
I wouldn't wish that on anyone.
I know.
Okay, let me go to the next question because we're so late here. What is the moral legal issue of picking up money you find on the ground? Oh, the short answer is that morally, well, I think legally there isn't any issue.
Yeah.
I assume it's anarchy at that point, but morally, you have a responsibility to try to return the money to whoever lost it. And it's that simple, because we have no desire for the unearned, and we don't want to see other people miserable, assuming they've done nothing wrong.
Well, I mean,
it's an issue of justice.
If it's $1 or something, I don't think that's people are going to go back to look for their dollar. But say if
the amount of money only changes the amount of effort you would make to try to return it to its owner.
Yeah.
But the amount isn't really the issue. If it's an issue where you can tell in advance that this money is never going to be found by the person who lost it, then there's certainly nothing wrong with picking it up and keeping it.
Right.
But generally, that's not the case. And you're going to say, well, did somebody lose this? Now, and I know, and she knows, and that guy over there knows. Oh, there is no guy over there. That, there are times when you're not going to wave a $100 bill in the air and say, hey, did anybody lose this?
No.
In the middle of a crowded shopping mall.
I don't think that it's wise. But say if you have like, it's a $100 bill in an envelope, and it's not just falling out of, it's in an envelope or something. Then you go back to, say, the manager of the store of the parking lot that you're in, and you ask them to keep it in case somebody, and then you've got to trust their judgment and their honesty, of course. But I think that would probably be a reasonable thing to do.
That's right. So, running so late, thank you for your questions. Appreciate that. No, I haven't read the novel Ant Hill.
No.
I'm assuming since you're asking, it's a recommendation, so I'll have to look into that. Thank you, everybody. There's so much more in the chat, but we've had great questions. We've had great conversations between the people in the chat. Always appreciate that, too. Next week, I promise you it will be less heavy. Now, maybe I shouldn't promise you. Never make a promise you can't be sure you will be able to keep, but it will probably be a lighter show. And in any event, as usual, you can find the notes, all of the links to all of the things we talked about, including Kathleen Kennedy and John Maynard Keynes and FDR, the dastardly polio sufferer. Maybe that's the one reason you feel bad for him, but not really. The damage that man did. Oh, Lord. And
He's
all
like,
of the...
I suffer. Everyone must suffer.
Really? We got to take care of the poor cripples like me. I shouldn't even get into that at the end of the show. What am I even talking about?
What are we saying?
The point was that links to all the stuff we talked about in the show notes will be posted right after the show. As always, if you have any suggestions for future episodes, things you want to hear us to talk more about, rants that you don't want to hear me talk about in the future, you can leave your comments both in the chat and on the 5 Minutes with Robert Nasir Facebook group. Anything you want to hear, hook us up. If you want to spend money, you could sponsor a show. Did you know for X amount of money, I have no idea what that is, you could sponsor a whole show by suggesting a topic and going to our PayPal or Patreon and sign up. Links are at robertnasir.com for all three of those, the 5 Minutes group, the PayPal link, the Patreon link. It's all just my real name, paypal.com/Robert Nasir,
Yeah.
etc. Do that thing. And as always, we wish you every success, all of the success you've earned. Nobody's watching this show unless they are already a damn good person and have earned all manner of success. We wish you flourishing. We wish you the kind of self-esteem that not only libertarians have, but everybody who understands they should not and must not be victims of those damned imperialists out there.
That's right.
That's right.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining us. And as always, we wish you luck.